I don't know about you, but I realize I'm a slow learner. And I was reminded of that as I was preparing for this presentation for the Novena of Hope. I was also reminded of a book that some of you may have heard by Robert Fulghum a little over 25 years ago. All I really need to know, I learned in kindergarten. And these are the things I learned in kindergarten, he says. Share everything, play fair, don't hit people, put things back where you found them. All of the basic things that all of you moms taught us. The lesson I take from that is sometimes we only understand what we learned early in life when we are in our middle age or even seniors. It has taken me many years to learn what I learned about evangelization early on. I entered the seminary fresh out of high school some 60 years ago in 1955. We did not use the word evangelization then, but as I looked back, I have spent most of my life learning about evangelization, just using different words: preaching, ministry, theology. But the fact is, I have spent more than 60 years studying the meaning of evangelization. And as I look back, the best definition I got of evangelization came from a woman who wrote to me over 50 years ago, shortly before my ordination. It was what she wrote at the beginning years of her marriage. I have become aware of what it means to be loved, and it is that awareness of being loved that I am trying to share with others. The awareness of being loved and sharing that awareness with others, bringing that awareness of being loved to another person. It was that experience of being loved that turned her life upside down for the past 65+ years of marriage. And that includes the lives of her husband, her childhood sweetheart, 4 children, 9 grandchildren, and a still growing generation of great-grandchildren. Sharing the awareness of being loved has become a lifestyle for her. Of course, she would be the first to admit that she has not always succeeded in living that lifestyle. But being aware of being loved turned her life upside down and led her to want to share that experience with others. Let me use that lens to understand the life of a man like Pope Francis. He's confusing to many. Is he a liberal? Is he a conservative? There are all kinds of opinions on that. But the one thing most people can agree on is that he really loves everyone, especially those whom the society does not see. And you can see it when he kisses a badly disfigured man with boils all over his face. You can see it when he washes the feet of a prisoner of another faith. And most obviously, when he smiles. If there ever was a smile that could light up a room, and does light up a room, Pope Francis has it. It's very hard, I think, to be in his presence without feeling his warmth and love. Where did it come from? There was an event that changed him and turned his life upside down as a late teenager. He speaks freely of it now. Ironically, it was the exact date a year later when this woman I mentioned got married. In his own words, his becoming aware of God's love. One day in particular, though was very important to me, September 21st, 1953. I was almost 17, It was Students' Day for us, the first day of spring. For you, the first day of autumn. But before going to the celebration, I passed through the parish I normally attended. I found that a priest I did not know, and I felt the need to go to confession. For me, this was an experience of an encounter. I found that someone was waiting for me, yet I did not know what happened. I can't remember. I don't know why this particular priest was there, whom I did not know, or why I felt this desire to confess. But the truth is that someone was waiting for me. He had been waiting for me for some time. After making my confession, I felt something had changed. I was not the same. I had heard something like a voice, a call. I was convinced that I should become a priest. Over and over again since then, Pope Francis tells his people, God is always there first, waiting for you. And the sacrament of confession is an encounter with the merciful God, who is always ready to forgive those who seek pardon. And recognizing how merciful God has been with me should make me merciful towards others. The Pope's Latin motto is Miserando atque eligendo, and they're still arguing over the translation of it. But I think it's basically, I became aware of the God who loved me, and I want to share that word with others. His life has become a living example of sharing his good news, of being aware, of being loved no matter what. Of course, Pope Francis would be among the first to say he has not always communicated that sense of being loved to others. There was a period in his life where others saw him as stern and a rigid legalist, and one not noted for smiling. But for the last 30 or 40 years, this is what has been consistently motivating him to share his awareness of being loved. I imagine Jesus was communicating that sense of being loved. Why else would people drop their nets and follow him? Why else would they run and tell their brothers and sisters and friends about their meeting with him? Why else would the woman at the well excitedly say, he knows everything about me, and yet he loves me? Recently, Pope Francis told the young people in the Philippines, when Matthew was going off to work that morning and said goodbye to his wife, he never thought that he was going to return in a hurry without money to tell his wife to prepare a banquet, the banquet for the one who had loved him first. Zacchaeus in the sycamore tree. We can go through so many people. His disciples experienced an awareness of being loved and then had to tell others about it and to love others the way they had been loved. This is what I think we mean when we speak of the gospel as good news, and the writers of the gospel as evangelists or tellers of the good news. That's what the old evangelization is. It's not the experience of getting 100 in an orthodoxy test. It's not the experience of the Pharisee justifying himself. It is the experience of knowing oneself as being loved. So what's the new evangelization? It's not really new, especially not in the last century. Pope John Paul made it the expression very famous in recent years, but it goes back to Paul VI. And he describes evangelization that is new in its order, in its methods, and in its expressions. This whole novena celebrates all the recent popes back to the time of the oldest of us here have been trying to communicate to us. Each of these popes has used his own words and style to communicate to us an awareness of being loved. Now, a word about our participation in the Novena of Hope and of any of the novena services we come to. We come to the shrine, I believe, to experience the sharing in the good news of others as we listen to favors that others have received. Maybe even the announcement of a favor that we have received. We come to the shrine hoping that our lives will be similarly blessed. Sometimes we come almost demanding that God loves us and that we be tempted to give, and we're tempted to give up hope if nothing seems to happen. And yet we get all kinds of signs. They may not be the signs that we want. I'm sure many of you have heard that visitors to Lourdes, that great center of healing, that it's been said that the greatest miracles at Lourdes are not those of physical healing. No one leaves Lourdes without a gain in faith. Moral and spiritual cures are more marvelous than the physical cures. Some go to Lourdes with a lifetime prejudice, yet their minds are cleared in a sudden manner. Frequently, skepticism gives way to faith. Coldness and antagonism become wholehearted love of God. And again, those who are not cured of bodily pain or whatever receive an increase in faith and resignation, true peace of soul. They come away with an understanding of why Jesus suffered so much to show us how much we are loved by God, and that blows them away. We come away with an awareness of being loved and committed to sharing that awareness with all we meet. Just as the early disciples, we should be filled with that. Come and see what happened. I woke up to the fact that God loves me. This is what the new evangelization is, and how this Novena of Hope fits the new evangelization.